Hi class. This video on unemployment will take a look at how unemployment affects gross domestic product. We're going to look at something called the GDP gap, which is basically the difference between where GDP could be or should be and where it is due to unemployment. The first myth that we have to get out of the way is that unemployment is always a bad thing. Full employment doesn't mean zero unemployment, but it does mean that cyclical unemployment is zero. For those of you who haven't watched the other videos, cyclical unemployment occurs due to economic downturns during the recessionary part of the business cycle. During these times, there are people who are looking for work who can't find it because there isn't enough demand for the products that manufacturers make or the services that people provide in order to actually hire them. The full unemployment rate is equal to the total frictional and structural unemployment because these types of unemployment are always occurring and are a natural part of our economy. In fact, frictional unemployment can actually be a positive thing because it shows that people are getting training, moving between jobs, and that they soon expect to be employed again. The full employment rate of unemployment is also referred to as the natural rate of unemployment. The natural rate of unemployment is achieved when labor markets are in balance. The number of job seekers equals the number of job vacancies. The natural rate of unemployment is not fixed. It depends on the demographic makeup of the labor force and the laws and the customs of each nation. The GDP gap is the difference between potential and actual GDP, where potential gross domestic product reflects the level of gross domestic product associated with the natural rate of unemployment. Economist Arthur Aachen quantified the relationship between unemployment and GDP as follows. For every 1% of unemployment above the natural rate, a negative GDP gap of about 2% occurs. This is known as Aachen's law. This means that the country is producing below what potentially could be produced, given our resources and level of technology. If you remember back to our discussion about production possibility frontiers, basically we'd be producing inside of our production possibility frontier. This figure shows the actual and potential real GDP and the unemployment rate from 1989 to 2013. The difference between actual and potential GDP is the GDP gap. A negative GDP gap measures the output the economy sacrifices when actual GDP falls short of potential GDP. A positive GDP gap indicates the actual GDP is above potential GDP. A high unemployment rate means a large GDP gap, negative, and a low unemployment rate means a small or even positive GDP gap. So as you can see here, in this area there is a negative GDP gap. As time went on, we actually went through a period of positive GDP gap where we were actually outperforming what we were expected to do. And then you'll notice here, this area is the Great Recession. So we are far below our potential GDP due to the large amount of unemployment at that time. Well, that's it for this video on the GDP gap and Aachen's law. Take what you've learned, go back and complete your problem set.